The ice storm hit without warning. Captain Voss gripped his command chair as the shuttle shook violently. Outside the small windows, nothing but white fury raged across the frozen landscape of planet K7741. The reptilian captain's scales had turned a pale gray color, something that happened when his species felt extreme stress. "Engines are failing!" shouted Engineer Brix from her station. The amphibious alien's webbed fingers moved quickly over the controls, but her large eyes showed panic. "The cold is freezing our fuel lines." Dr. Nalim, the ship's science officer, stood perfectly still in the center of the cabin. His crystalline body caught the emergency lighting and threw rainbow patterns across the walls. When his species was thinking hard, they became very quiet and very bright. Right now, Dr. Nalim was almost blinding. "We're going down," Captain Voss announced to his crew. "Prepare for emergency landing." Jake Thompson looked up from the maintenance panel he was working on. The human had been trying to fix a broken heating unit when the storm started. Now he calmly put away his tools and strapped himself into his safety seat. While the three aliens showed obvious signs of fear, Jake seemed relaxed, almost curious about what would happen next. The shuttle hit the ice hard. Metal screamed against frozen ground as they slid for what felt like forever. When everything finally stopped moving, the only sound was the howling wind outside. Captain Voss slowly stood up and checked his crew. Engineer Brix had a small cut on her arm, but she said she was fine. Dr. Nalim's crystal body had a tiny crack near his shoulder, but he insisted it didn't hurt. Jake had a bruise on his forehead, but was already moving around, checking the shuttles. "Damage! Report!" Captain Voss ordered. Engineer Brix looked at her instruments and shook her head. "Main engines are dead. Communications are down. Life support is running on emergency power only." Dr. Nalim's crystal body grew brighter as he calculated their situation. "At current power usage, we have approximately 72 hours of heat and air. After that, the internal temperature will drop to match the outside environment." "Which is how cold exactly?" Jake asked, pulling on his jacket. "-43 degrees Celsius, Dr. Nalim replied. "No known galactic species can survive more than minutes in such conditions without proper environmental suits." Jake nodded thoughtfully. "That's pretty cold." Captain Voss stared at the human. "Pretty cold? That temperature would freeze a Keth warrior solid in less than an hour. Engineer Brix's home planet never got colder than 20 degrees above zero. Dr. Nalim's people lived in controlled crystal caves where temperature never varied more than a few degrees." "We need to send a distress signal," Captain Voss decided. "The mothership will send a rescue shuttle." "Sir," Engineer Brix said quietly, "the storm is too strong. No shuttle can fly in these conditions. The wind speed is over 200 kilometers per hour. Dr. Nalim's glow dimmed slightly. "Weather analysis indicates the storm will continue for at least 120 hours. Rescue cannot arrive before our life support fails." The cabin fell silent except for the wind. Captain Voss felt his scales growing colder already. His people needed constant warmth to think clearly. Soon, his mind would start slowing down as his body tried to conserve energy. Engineer Brix wrapped her arms around herself. Her amphibious body was designed for warm, wet environments. The dry air was already making her skin feel tight and uncomfortable. Dr. Nalim stood perfectly still, his crystal form growing dimmer as he tried to use less energy. His species could slow their metabolism when resources were limited, but even they had limits. Jake looked around at his crewmates and frowned. "You guys, don't look so good. We are trapped," Captain Voss explained. "Our species cannot survive in these conditions. We must wait for rescue or die." Jake walked to one of the shuttle's small windows and looked outside. The storm was incredible. Snow and ice flew horizontally across the landscape like bullets. The wind made a sound like screaming. Everything was white and violent and deadly. Jake said. "We might want to think about finding some food and water while we wait." The three aliens stared at him in shock. Food and water, Engineer Bricks repeated. Outside? In the storm? The shuttle's emergency supplies will last maybe 2 days, Jake explained. If we're going to be here longer, we need more resources. Dr. Nalim's crystal body flashed bright red, which meant he was very alarmed. Jake, the probability of surviving even 10 minutes in those conditions is less than 3% for any species. The wind alone would knock you down and bury you in snow, Captain Voss added. The cold would freeze your blood in your veins. Jake listened politely to his crewmates' concerns. He understood their fear. These were smart people from advanced civilizations. They had science and technology that humans could barely understand. If they said the conditions outside were deadly, they probably were. But Jake had grown up in Montana. His grandfather had taught him to fish and hunt in weather that would terrify most humans. He'd spent winter nights in snow caves, caught fish through ice with his bare hands, and walked miles through blizzards to get home. Of course, he'd never been in weather quite this bad. And he'd always had proper winter gear. Right now, all he had was his standard uniform and a thin emergency coat. Still, sitting in the shuttle waiting to die didn't seem like a great plan either. I think I'll take a look around anyway, Jake said, checking his pockets for useful items. Jake, no, Captain Voss ordered. I forbid it. It's suicide. Jake paused at the shuttle's door and looked back at his friends. Captain Voss was trying to sound commanding, but his scales were getting paler by the minute. Engineer Bricks was shivering even though the heaters were still working. Dr. Nalim was so dim he was barely visible. I'll be careful, Jake promised. And I'll stay close to the shuttle. The readings show certain death, Dr. Nalim warned. Please reconsider. Jake smiled at the crystal being. Sometimes the readings are wrong. He opened the shuttle door, and the storm rushed in like a living thing. The wind was so loud it hurt their ears. Snow filled the cabin in seconds. The temperature dropped 20 degrees instantly. Jake stepped outside and closed the door behind him. Through the window, the aliens watched their human crewmate disappear into the white fury of the storm. According to everything they knew about biology and survival, they would never see Jake Thompson alive again. They were about to discover just how wrong they could be. Inside the shuttle, 3 aliens watched their instruments in horror. Jake's life signs were showing on their medical scanner, but the readings made no sense. His heart rate is elevated but stable, Dr. Nalim reported, his crystal body flickering with confusion. Body temperature is dropping but much slower than calculations predicted. Captain Voss pressed his face against the window, trying to see through the storm. Where is he? I lost sight of him 30 seconds ago. Engineer Bricks checked her equipment. Readings. The wind speed out there is 215 kilometers per hour. The temperature is negative 45 degrees. He should be unconscious by now. Through the howling wind, they could barely make out a dark shape moving across the ice. Jake was walking steadily forward, leaning into the wind but not falling down. He moved like someone who knew exactly what he was doing. This is impossible, Captain Voss muttered. His own scales were turning blue from just the brief cold that had entered when Jake opened the door. No biological being can function in those conditions. Dr. Nalim's crystal form pulsed brighter as he tried to understand what they were seeing. Perhaps humans have physical adaptations we were not aware of. I should contact the mothership. The science officer activated the emergency communication system. The signal was weak because of the storm, but he managed to reach their orbiting vessel. This is Dr. Nalim on Shuttle 7. We have crashed on K7741. One crew member is currently outside in the storm. The voice of Chief Medical Officer Dr. Gray came through with lots of static. Dr. Gray was a gaseous being who existed as a cloud of intelligent particles. His species understood biology better than most others in the galaxy. Outside? In those conditions? Are you recovering a body? Negative. The human crew member, Jake Thompson, left the shuttle voluntarily. He appears to be alive and moving. A long pause filled with static. Then Dr. Gray's voice returned, sounding confused. That cannot be correct. Our medical databases show that no species can survive surface conditions on K7741 without environmental protection. Please confirm your readings. Dr. Nalim looked at his instruments again. Confirmed. The human is alive and appears to be searching for something. Another pause. The human must be experiencing hypothermia-induced delirium. This causes irrational behavior before death. You should prepare to retrieve the body within the hour. Captain Voss watched Jake through the window. The human had stopped moving and was kneeling on the ice, brushing snow away from something. He doesn't look delirious. He looks like he's working. Engineer Brix pointed to another reading on her screen. His body temperature has stabilized. It's low, but not dropping anymore. That's impossible, Dr. Gray's voice crackled through the radio. The heat loss in those conditions should be immediate and fatal. Outside, Jake had cleared away a large area of snow. Underneath, they could see dark ice. He was studying the surface carefully, moving back and forth like he was looking for something specific. What is he doing? Captain Voss asked. Dr. Nalim enhanced their external camera view. He appears to be examining the ice formation, perhaps looking for structural weaknesses. Jake stood up and walked back toward the shuttle. For a moment, the aliens thought he was giving up and coming back inside. Instead, he started pulling pieces of metal from the damaged shuttle exterior. He selected several long, narrow pieces and what looked like a broken antenna. He's making tools, Engineer Brix realized. Jake carried his improvised equipment back to the cleared area on the ice. He used one of the metal pieces like a spear, driving it down hard against the dark surface. Again and again, he struck the ice, chipping away at it bit by bit. The human appears to be attempting to break through the ice layer, Dr. Nalim observed. But why? Captain Voss's reptilian mind was slowing down from the cold, but he tried to think. Water. There might be liquid water under the ice. Liquid. Water at these temperatures? Engineer Brix shook her head. Impossible. But Jake kept working. His movements were steady and purposeful. Every few minutes he would stop and examine his progress. The hole in the ice grew deeper. Dr. Gray's voice came through the radio again. Update on the human's status? Still alive and working, Dr. Nalim reported. He has been outside for 47 minutes. Impossible. Send me the medical readings. Directly! Dr. Nalim transmitted Jake's vital signs to the mothership. After a few minutes, Dr. Gray responded, his voice full of disbelief. These readings suggest the human's metabolism has increased significantly. His body is generating heat at a rate I've never seen in any species. How is this possible? Inside the shuttle, the temperature was dropping as their heating system worked. Harder to replace the warmth lost when Jake had opened the door. Captain Voss was moving very slowly now. Engineer Brix had wrapped herself in emergency blankets. Dr. Nalim had dimmed his crystal body to save energy. But outside, Jake was still, working. He had broken through the ice and was now using another piece of metal to widen the hole. Dark water was visible at the bottom. There is liquid water under the ice, Dr. Nalim reported with amazement. At those temperatures? Dr. Gray sounded shocked. That water should be frozen solid. Jake knelt beside his hole and peered into the dark water. He stayed very still for several minutes, watching and waiting. Then, suddenly, he moved. He took off his gloves. No, Captain Voss whispered. His hands will freeze instantly. Jake rolled up his sleeves and plunged both arms into the freezing water. The aliens watched in absolute horror as their human crewmate stuck his bare arms into water that should have frozen his flesh in seconds. They expected to see him pull, back his hands, screaming in pain. Instead, Jake stayed perfectly calm. His arms moved under the water with slow, careful movements. He looked like he was feeling around for something. His hands should be frozen solid by now, Engineer Brix said, quietly. The nerve endings should be destroyed, Dr. Nalim added. He shouldn't even be able to move his fingers. But Jake's arms kept moving under the water, patient, methodical, like he had done this many times before. Then, suddenly, he pulled his arms out of the water. In his hands was a large silver fish. The three aliens stared in complete silence as Jake held up his catch. The fish was alive and struggling, but Jake had caught it with nothing but his bare hands in water cold enough to kill most galactic species instantly. Jake looked toward the shuttle and held up the fish, showing his crewmates what he had found. Then, he put his arms back into the water and started fishing again. Jake's hands moved through the icy water like he was born to do this. His fingers searched along the bottom of the hole, feeling for movement in the darkness below. The water was so cold it should have numbed his hands completely, but somehow he could still feel everything. Inside the shuttle, Dr. Nalim was frantically running calculations on his crystal computer system. Numbers and equations flashed across his transparent body in bright colors. Nothing made sense according to everything he knew about biology. "The water temperature is -2 degrees Celsius, Dr. Nalim announced. "Human tissue should freeze and die in less than 30 seconds of contact." Captain Voss pressed his face against the window, his reptilian eyes wide with disbelief. "How long has he had his hands in there now?" Engineer Brix checked her timer. 4 minutes and 27 seconds. His hands should be completely frozen by now. But Jake's hands kept moving. Suddenly, his whole body tensed. He had found something. Moving very slowly and carefully, he began to close his hands around whatever was hiding in the dark water. The fish tried to escape, but Jake was ready. His hands moved with surprising speed, trapping the creature before it could swim away. He lifted it out of the water smoothly, showing his alien crewmates another large silver fish. 2 fish, Captain Voss whispered. He caught 2 fish with his bare hands. Dr. Gray's voice crackled through the radio from the mothership. "Please repeat your last transmission. Did you say the human caught fish?" "Confirmed," Dr. Nalim replied. "The human has now caught 2 fish from liquid water using only his hands." A long silence filled with static. Then Dr. Gray spoke again, his voice full of confusion. "This is medically impossible. The human's hands should be suffering from severe frostbite. His blood circulation should have stopped completely." Jake set the second fish beside the first and looked back at the water. Both fish were still alive, flopping around on the ice. He seemed satisfied with his success, but not finished with his work. He rolled his sleeves up higher and put his arms back into the freezing water. "He's going for a third," Engineer Brix said with amazement. Inside the shuttle, the 3 aliens were getting colder by the minute. Their heating system was working as hard as it could, but the outside temperature was too extreme. Captain Voss could barely think clearly anymore. His reptilian brain was shutting down to save energy. Engineer. Brix had wrapped herself in every emergency blanket they had, but she was still shivering. Her amphibious skin was turning a pale blue color that meant her body was going into survival mode. Dr. Nalim had dimmed his crystal body to almost nothing. He was using the minimum energy possible to stay conscious and keep monitoring Jake's impossible survival. But outside in the deadly storm, Jake looked perfectly comfortable. His movements were calm and controlled. He wasn't shivering or showing any signs of distress. If anything, he seemed to be enjoying himself. His core body temperature is maintaining at 36 degrees, Dr. Nalim reported. This should be impossible. His body is generating heat faster than the environment can take it away. Jake's hands found another fish. This one was bigger than the first 2, and it fought harder to escape. But Jake was patient and gentle. He didn't try to grab it roughly. Instead, he moved his hands slowly until he could guide the fish toward the surface. When he lifted the 3rd fish out of the water, it was almost as long as his arm. That's enough food for all of us, Captain Voss realized. For several days, Jake looked at his 3 fish and nodded with satisfaction. He pulled his arms out of the water and began to put his sleeves back down. His hands were red from the cold, but they moved normally. No signs of frostbite or nerve damage. Dr. Gray's voice came through the radio again. I need to speak with the human directly. These readings cannot be accurate. Jake picked up his 3 fish and started walking back toward the shuttle. The storm was still raging around him, but he moved steadily through the wind and snow like it was just another day outside. He's coming back, Engineer Bricks announced. As Jake got closer to the shuttle, they could see his face clearly through the window. His cheeks were red from the cold, and there was ice in his hair, but he was smiling. He looked proud of his success. He reached the shuttle door and knocked gently. Captain Voss opened it quickly, and Jake stepped inside with his catch. Cold air rushed in with him, making all 3 aliens gasp from the sudden temperature drop. Jake closed the door behind him and looked around at his crewmates. They were all staring at him like he was some kind of impossible creature from a fairy tale. Got dinner, Jake announced, holding up his fish. These look like Arctic char. Should taste pretty good. Dr. Nalim's crystal body flashed bright white with shock. Jake, you have been outside in lethal conditions for over an hour. You put your bare hands in freezing water for extended periods. According to all known medical science, you should be dead. Jake looked at his hands and flexed his fingers. They were still red, but they worked perfectly. Yeah, it's pretty cold out there, but not too bad once you get used to it. Not too bad? Captain Voss repeated. His voice was weak from the cold that had entered when Jake opened the door. The temperature would kill any of us in minutes. Jake nodded thoughtfully. I guess you guys aren't built for cold weather. Don't worry about it. Happens to everyone until they learn the tricks. He walked over to the emergency supply kit and pulled out some basic tools. We need to get a fire going so I can cook these fish. Do we have anything that burns? Engineer Bricks pointed weakly toward a storage compartment. Emergency fuel tablets. But the ventilation system cannot handle open flames safely. Jake examined the shuttle's ventilation system and made a few quick adjustments with his tools. There, we go. Should be fine now. Within minutes, Jake had a small but steady fire burning in an improvised metal container. The smell of cooking fish began to fill the shuttle. As his alien crewmates watched in continued amazement, Jake started preparing their meal with the confidence of someone who had done this 1,000 times before. Anyone want to learn how to fish? Jake asked cheerfully. The smell of cooking fish filled the shuttle as Jake turned the pieces over his small fire. His 3 alien crewmates watched him work with fascination and confusion. The fish meat was starting to turn golden brown, and it smelled better than any of their emergency food supplies. This is incredible, Dr. Nalim said, his crystal body glowing brighter as he warmed up near the fire. You obtained fresh protein in conditions that should have killed you instantly. Jake used a piece of metal to flip one of the fish fillets. My grandfather taught me to ice fish when I was 8 years old. Back in Montana, we used to fish through ice that was 3 feet thick. Captain Voss moved closer to the fire, grateful for the warmth. His scales were slowly returning to their normal green color as his body temperature rose. Your grandfather did this same activity? In similar conditions? Well, not quite this cold, Jake admitted. And we usually had proper gear. But the basic idea is the same. Fish are sluggish in cold water, so they're easier to catch if you know where to look. Engineer Bricks unwrapped herself from her emergency blankets and held her webbed hands near the fire. But how did your hands not freeze? The water temperature was below the freezing point of most biological fluids. Jake looked at his hands and wiggled his fingers. They were still a bit red, but completely functional. Humans have pretty good circulation when we need it. Plus, you keep moving your hands so the blood doesn't stop flowing. It's uncomfortable, but not dangerous if you don't stay in too long. Dr. Nalim ran quick calculations in his crystal computer brain. The heat loss should still be faster than any biological system can compensate for, unless human metabolism can increase dramatically under stress. Maybe, Jake said with a shrug. All I know is that people have been doing this for thousands of years on my planet. My ancestors survived ice ages that lasted for centuries. The fish was ready. Jake carefully divided the cooked meat among 4 portions and handed them out. The aliens accepted their food gratefully. It was the first hot meal they'd had since the crash. Captain Voss tasted his portion carefully. His reptilian taste buds weren't designed for this type of food, but the fish was surprisingly good. More importantly, it was protein and fat that his body desperately needed to maintain heat. "This is excellent," Engineer Brix said after taking a bite. Her amphibious species usually ate aquatic plants, but the fish provided nutrients she needed. "How often could you do this fishing process?" Jake thought about it while he ate. "Depends on how many fish are in there. I saw quite a few moving around under the ice. We could probably get food for several days if we're careful not to overfish." The area. Dr. Nalim's crystal body pulsed with interest. "Would it be possible for other species to learn this technique?" "Sure," Jake said. "I mean, you guys would need more protection from the cold. But the basic fishing method isn't that complicated." "Captain," Voss looked doubtful. "My species requires external heat to function. Even with protection, I would become too slow to catch anything." "That's why you work in teams," Jake explained. "One person catches the fish, others help with preparation and keeping warm. My grandfather used to take groups of people fishing. Everyone had a job." Engineer Brix was very interested in this idea. Her people were always looking for new ways to gather food. "Could you show us how to prepare for such an expedition?" Jake finished his fish and started planning. "We'd need to make better cold weather gear from shuttle materials, set up warming stations outside, maybe build a windbreak to make working easier." The radio crackled to life. Dr. Gray's voice came through from the mothership, clearer now that the storm was starting to weaken. "Shuttle 7, please respond. We've been monitoring your situation. Medical readings show all crew members are alive and stable. How is this possible?" Dr. Nalim answered the call. "The human crew member obtained food using traditional fishing techniques. We are no longer in immediate danger of starvation." "Fishing? In those surface conditions?" Dr. Gray sounded amazed. "Please send detailed reports of the human's methods. The medical implications could be revolutionary." Jake spoke up. "Tell him I can teach other people to do it. It just takes practice and the right approach." A long pause. Then Dr. Gray responded. "The human believes he can teach these survival techniques to other species?" "Confirmed," Dr. Nalim said. "The human has offered to demonstrate his methods to the crew." Another pause. "This could change everything we know about survival in extreme environments. Document everything carefully." Jake was already gathering materials from around the shuttle. He found insulation material, reflective panels, and flexible cables. "Brix, want to try a short trip outside? I can show you how to stay warm enough to help with fishing." Engineer Brix looked nervous but curious. "What would I need to do?" "First, we build you better protection," Jake said. He started wrapping the insulation material around her arms and legs. "Then we make frequent trips. Go out for a few minutes, come back to warm up, go out again. Your body needs time to adjust." Captain Voss watched Jake work. "You really think other species can learn to survive in these conditions?" "Not exactly the same way I do," Jake admitted. "But everyone can improve their cold tolerance with the right training and equipment. It's mostly about understanding how heat loss works and planning around it." Dr. Nalim was fascinated by the implications. If humans can teach survival techniques to other galactic species, it could revolutionize exploration and emergency response. Jake finished preparing Engineer Brix's improvised cold weather gear. She looked like she was wearing a shiny metal blanket, but the insulation would help keep her warm. "Ready to try it?" Jake asked. Engineer Brix took a deep breath. "Let's do it." Jake opened the shuttle door carefully. The storm had weakened considerably, but it was still brutally cold outside. He stepped out first, then helped Engineer Brix follow him. Captain Voss and Dr. Nallum watched through the window as Jake led Engineer Brix slowly across the ice toward the fishing hole. She moved carefully, staying close to Jake for protection from the wind. They stayed outside for only 3 minutes before returning to the shuttle. But Engineer Brix was smiling when she came back inside. "I was cold, but not dangerously cold," she reported. "The insulation helped significantly." The radio crackled again. This time it was a different voice. Admiral Ross, the human fleet commander, was calling from the main ship. "Jake Thompson, this is Admiral Ross. We've been monitoring your situation. I have an urgent mission request for you." Admiral Ross's voice came through the radio clearly as the storm continued to weaken. Jake recognized her voice immediately. She was one of only 12 humans serving in the Galactic Fleet, and she had a reputation for handling impossible situations. "Admiral, this is Jake Thompson. Good to hear from you, ma'am." "Jake, I need you to listen carefully. 3 more survey ships have crashed in this system. Similar conditions to your location. We have 47 crew members from 6 different species stranded on frozen worlds." Captain Voss felt his scales turn pale again. 47 people! "Yes," Admiral Ross continued. "The storms are too severe for normal rescue operations. Our standard cold weather gear isn't designed for these extreme conditions. Every rescue attempt has failed." Dr. Nalim's crystal body began flashing with calculations. "At current survival rates, most of those crew members will be dead within 24 hours. Jake listened to the Admiral's report while checking his improvised fishing equipment. "What do you need me to do? Galactic Command has reviewed your survival reports. They want to know if you can lead rescue operations for the other crash sites, using your techniques." Engineer Brix looked at Jake with amazement. "They want you to rescue 47 people from 3 different frozen worlds?" "That's the mission," Admiral Ross confirmed. "Jake, your methods have kept your crew alive when our computers said it was impossible. We need those methods applied on a larger scale." Jake thought about the challenge. 3 frozen worlds, dozens of people from species he'd never worked with, before extreme weather conditions across multiple locations. It was a huge responsibility. "I can do it," Jake said finally. "But I'll need help, and I want to bring my crew with me." Captain Voss stared at the human. "You want us to help with rescue operations in conditions like this?" "You've already proven that other species can learn human survival techniques," Jake explained. "Brix just spent 3 minutes outside and came back fine. With proper training and equipment, you guys can handle much more." Dr. Nalim ran probability calculations. "The statistical likelihood of success increases dramatically with larger teams and combined species knowledge." Admiral Ross seemed pleased with Jake's response. "What do you need for the operation?" Jake started making lists in his head. "First, I need detailed information about each crash site. Terrain, weather patterns, number of survivors, species involved. Second, I need basic cold weather materials. Insulation, reflective materials, emergency heating supplies." "Approved. What else?" "I need volunteer crews willing to learn human survival methods quickly. And I need permission to modify standard rescue protocols," Captain Voss spoke up. "Admiral, I volunteer my crew for the mission. We have already seen Jake's methods work. We can help teach other teams." "Count me in too," Engineer Brix added. "If we can save 47 lives, we have to try." Dr. Nalim's crystal body glowed brighter. "I can provide scientific analysis and medical support. My species has extensive data on environmental adaptation." Admiral Ross was quiet for a moment. "Jake, Command is concerned about the risk. These are extreme conditions. Losing rescue teams along with the original crash survivors would be a disaster." Jake understood the concern. But he also understood something that the alien commanders didn't. Humans had been surviving in impossible conditions for thousands of years. They just needed to share that knowledge. "Admiral, every species in the galaxy has survival skills that others don't understand. Humans happen to be good at cold weather, but I bet those stranded crews have knowledge that could help with the rescue too." "Explain." The Keth are strong and can work in conditions that would exhaust other species. The Quarth can calculate exact environmental factors and predict weather changes. The Aquanos understand water and ice formation better than anyone. Jake looked at his three crewmates. We're not just teaching human techniques. We're combining the best survival knowledge from multiple species. That's how we succeed. Dr. Nalim's crystal form flashed with excitement. A multi-species survival protocol, using the environmental advantages of each civilization. Exactly, Jake said. The humans teach cold tolerance. The Quarth provide environmental analysis. The Keth provide physical strength for construction and heavy work. Everyone contributes what they do best. Admiral Ross sounded interested. How quickly can you develop these protocols? Jake looked around the shuttle. They had successfully combined human fishing techniques with alien technology and materials. Engineer Brix had already learned basic cold weather survival. Dr. Nalim was documenting everything for future use. We already have the basic framework, Jake said. Give us 6 hours to refine the methods and train a larger team. Then we can start the rescue operations. 6 hours? Captain Voss repeated. To develop training for multiple species survival in extreme conditions? The foundation is already there, Jake explained. Every species has instincts for survival. We just need to show them how to apply those instincts in cold environments. Engineer Brix nodded agreement. Jake's techniques worked for me because they built on abilities I already had. He didn't try to make me human. He helped me be a better Aquanos in cold conditions. Admiral Ross made her decision. Permission granted. I'm sending a fast transport, with supplies and volunteer crews. You have 12 hours to prepare rescue protocols and train teams. Understood, Admiral. Jake, one more thing. Intelligence reports suggest these frozen worlds aren't natural. There might be more to this situation than random crashes. Dr. Nalim's crystal body flashed red with alarm. What kind of more? Unknown. But the crash pattern is too regular to be coincidence. All 3 ships reported similar equipment failures just before going down. Be prepared for anything. The radio went quiet. Jake looked at his 3 crewmates, who were all staring at him, with expressions of amazement and concern. So, Jake said with a slight smile, anyone want to help me save 47 people from 3 frozen worlds that might not be what they seem? Captain Voss straightened his shoulders. When do we start? Jake picked up his fishing equipment and headed for the door. Right now. We need more food before the transport arrives, and Brix needs more cold weather practice. Where are you going? Dr. Nalim asked. Jake opened the shuttle door and grinned. Fishing. This time we're all going fishing. The rescue operations were going better than anyone had hoped. Jake's team had saved 38 of the 47 stranded crew members in just 2 days. His multi-species survival protocols were working perfectly across 3 different frozen worlds. But Engineer Brix had found something that changed everything. Jake, you need to see this, Brix called from her analysis station on the rescue ship. She had been studying geological data from all 3 crash sites, while Jake led the final rescue missions. Jake returned from the surface of the 3rd frozen world, where he had just helped rescue the last group of survivors. His mixed species. Rescue teams were celebrating their success, but Brix looked worried. What did you find? Jake asked, sitting down beside her workstation. Brix pulled up a 3-dimensional map showing all 3 frozen planets in the system. These worlds aren't naturally frozen. Look at the energy readings. Dr. Nalim leaned over to examine Brix's data. His crystal body began glowing as he processed the information. Artificial cooling systems. Massive ones, buried deep beneath each planet's surface. Captain Voss joined them at the analysis station. Artificial? You mean someone made these worlds cold on purpose? Not just cold, Brix explained. The entire atmospheric and geological systems have been modified. These planets are preservation chambers. Jake studied the energy patterns on Brix's screen. Preservation for what? Dr. Nalim's calculations were running faster now, his crystal form flashing with bright colors. Biological samples. The energy signatures matched genetic storage facilities, but on a planetary scale. Admiral Ross's voice came through the communication system from the main rescue ship. All teams, report. To the command center immediately. We have a situation. Within minutes, Jake and his team were gathered around a large holographic display showing the entire star system. Admiral Ross stood beside the display with Chief Medical Officer Dr. Gray, whose gaseous form was swirling with unusual patterns. Doctor, Gray has been analyzing the data from your rescue operations, Admiral Ross began. Tell them what you found. Dr. Gray's cloud-like body shifted into a more focused shape. The equipment failures that caused all 3 crashes weren't random. They were triggered by automated systems responding to your ship's presence. Triggered how? Jake asked. Something on these worlds detected advanced spacefaring technology and activated defensive protocols. Your rescue operations woke up systems that have been dormant for thousands of years. Brix shared her geological findings with the group. The frozen preservation systems are part of a massive network. There are similar facilities on 12 other worlds in this system. Dr. Nalim projected his calculations into the holographic display. Based on the energy output and preservation capacity, these facilities could store genetic samples from millions of different species. Captain Voss looked amazed. An entire system designed to preserve life forms from across the galaxy? Not just preserve, Dr. Gray corrected. The awakening systems are beginning to revive some of the stored specimens. Your survival activities on the surface have convinced the automated systems that the galaxy is ready for the preserved species to return. Jake felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold. Return? You mean these are extinct species that someone saved? Admiral Ross nodded grimly. Preliminary scans show genetic patterns from civilizations that disappeared thousands of years ago, species that were thought lost forever. The holographic display zoomed in on one of the facility locations. Deep beneath the ice, massive chambers were lighting up as ancient systems came back to life. The question is, Admiral Ross continued, what do we do about it? These facilities represent the greatest scientific discovery in galactic history, but we don't know who built them or why. Jake looked at the data flowing across the displays. Thousands of species, millions of genetic samples, technology beyond anything the current galaxy could build. It was overwhelming. What does the Galactic Council want to do? He asked. They're divided, Admiral Ross admitted. Some want to study the facilities carefully and slowly. Others want to shut everything down until we understand the risks. Dr. Gray's gaseous form pulsed with different. Of course, but there's another option. The automated systems seem to respond positively to multi-species cooperation and survival success. Your rescue operations proved that different civilizations can work together effectively. Engineer Brix understood the implication immediately. The systems want to see if we're ready for the preserved species to return. They're testing us. Testing how? Captain Voss asked. Dr. Nalim's crystal body flashed with realization. The crashes weren't accidents. They were survival challenges. The systems wanted to see if current galactic civilizations could save each other in impossible conditions. Jake thought about everything that had happened. The extreme conditions, the need for multi-species cooperation, the success of combining different survival techniques. It all made sense now. We passed the test, he said quietly. Admiral Ross nodded. Preliminary scans suggest the preservation systems are preparing to begin controlled revival processes, starting with species that are compatible with current galactic civilizations. How many species are we talking about? Jake asked. Dr. Gray's form swirled with amazement. Conservative estimates suggest over 50,000 distinct species, including several that our historical records show were incredibly advanced before they disappeared. The room fell silent as everyone absorbed this information. 50,000 species returning to a galaxy that thought they were extinct forever. It would change everything about galactic civilization. "What's my role in all this?" Jake asked. Admiral Ross smiled. "The Galactic Council has voted unanimously. You're being appointed as the first director of interspecies survival training. Every galactic survey ship will carry human crew members trained in your methods. But more than that," Dr. Gray added, "you'll be working directly with the preservation facilities as they begin revival operations, teaching returning species how to survive in the current galaxy." Captain Voss stepped forward. "The three of us request assignment to Jake's training program. We want to help teach other species the cooperation methods we learned." Engineer Bricks nodded agreement. "These techniques saved our lives. Now they might help save entire civilizations." Dr. Nalim's crystal body glowed with determination. "The scientific possibilities are limitless. We must document everything for future generations." Jake looked around at his alien friends, then back at the holographic display showing the awakening preservation facilities. A few days ago, he had just been a maintenance worker trying to fix a heating unit. Now he was responsible for helping prepare the galaxy for the return of thousands of extinct civilizations. "When do we start?" he asked. Admiral Ross activated a new display showing construction plans for training facilities across multiple worlds. "Tomorrow. The first preservation chamber is scheduled to begin revival operations in 72 hours. Jake nodded and turned to his team. "I guess we better get ready to teach the galaxy how to fish." Captain Voss, Engineer Bricks, and Dr. Nalim looked at him with confusion. "Fishing?" Captain Voss asked. Jake grinned. "Not just fishing. Survival, cooperation, how to find hope when everything looks impossible. How to work together when your species have nothing in common except the need to stay alive." He looked back at the display showing the ancient preservation facilities coming back to life. "We're going to teach the galaxy that sometimes the best way to face the impossible is to roll up your sleeves, stick your hands in the cold water, and start catching dinner with your bare hands." Dr. Nalim's crystal body flashed with what Jake had learned was the equivalent of laughter. "I believe," Dr. Nalim said, "that the returning civilizations are going to find the current galaxy much more interesting than they expected." Jake smiled as he watched the lights of awakening preservation chambers spread across the holographic star map. Somewhere in those ancient facilities, thousands of species were preparing to return to a universe that had learned the value of working together. It was going to be quite an adventure.